I want to talk about Apprentice, Lesson 9, Theory of Everything. I usually break the lesson up into two halves. The first half is going through the theory part, and the second half is applying that in a Rada circle kind of way. I start by revising the 14 actions of distresser. So draw that out of the students. What are they? You should, most of the students here should have them by now. We're at that point in the syllabus where you know you should have all 14 items of distresser. If there's somebody that hasn't come in at the right point in Apprentice, then the other apprentices can fill them in. So you get your 14 actions off them verbally up on a whiteboard. It's really good because you'll be referring to them again. Then we talk about today we're going to talk about attacking and when to attack and choosing that right moment to attack and choosing which attack to use. All right, so I would then, there's a couple of things. So we've talked about our 14 actions of distresser. I actually use this in every class where I'm teaching a technique. I showed this to the class and go, today we're doing this one or that one, so that as they're coming through, they're getting a feel for where in the theory the particular technique sits. Okay, so you've talked about your 14 actions of distresser. You might want to talk about Puck's flowchart and how he's effectively saying that you only attack with that when it says if the sword's not coming. So that's an abbreviation of have you diverted with an atajo or something else similar to that, or is it so slow because it's part of the way through a cut or something that it's not coming soon enough, right? And then I might talk about movements for a bit and the fact that our attacks and all our techniques are made up of movements, and the more movements, the slower they are, and that each point in the movement is where we make the decision on what to do next or maybe change our minds. So a thrust, very quick, the decision, and then it's done. But with a cut, you might decide halfway through to end up with the defense of the right angle rather than with an attack. So what is the point at which we actually make a decision to attack? Before we can do that, we need to know which of these 14 actions that we put up on the whiteboard or we're remembering in our heads, which of these 14 actions are the ones that end in an attack. So the obvious ones are the 5 attacks. Hopefully they'll come up with those. That's my washing needs to go out. 5 attacks. The next one they're likely to come up with, if you think about it for a bit, are the 4 generals, all end in a thrust. And then there's one more, which is the conclusions, which we teach several of. So those are the actions that we'll be looking at today. We'll be looking at the attacks, the generals, and the conclusions. And that last moment, the last movement, so you've done spiral, you've done whatever else comes before your beginning of your cut, and you're at the point now where you are about to land your cut or you're about to make your thrust. Where are you, and what decisions are you going to make at that point? Well, with the thrust, you're at the beginning of the thrust. With cuts and reverses, you're just as you're they are just as you're going. Okay. Let's think about that. You can, after you've released your hanging guard, you can make a decision here to change your mind. But at the moment, today we're going to talk about the hanging guard as being the last moment of contact. The last moment of contact. You can see I haven't taught this for a while. Your hanging guard is the last moment of contact before you make that attack. So, with your thrusts, you might be in a taho on the inside or outside line. With your cuts, you might be in a hanging guard with the pressure on your blade, either on the inside or the outside. And you might want to talk to them for a minute about the fact that with a hanging guard, it usually starts with somebody press you, and here I've got my pressure on the pressure is on the outside line, and I fold, and suddenly the pressure is in my inside line. Okay, my pressure is my... This is not the most important part of this lesson. Okay, I'm talking about it so that they can understand the column headings. I'm happy for us to change column headings into something simpler if you find it difficult to understand. It's just this position. I don't know, I don't have a copy of the column headings with me. You'd think it would be at the end of the lesson plan, but no. But basically, they're a toe on the inside, a toe on the outside. There's folded to pressure on the inside and pressure on the outside. And there's, where else would you have? You're the generals. Two of them end in a Tahoes just before you attack, and two of them end up underneath, which, interesting enough, Rada calls an Ataho, a lesser Ataho than the ones that are on top. So that's underneath on the inside and underneath on the outside, just before you launch an attack. And that brings us to the exercise where I go, well, here's a list of columns of those positions that we just talked about, and here are your various actions that we've decided end in attacks. Which actions suit which positions and the amount of pressure. So then you should talk a bit about pressure and how important blade pressure is in deciding what action to choose. When you hand out the exercise, I would say the important thing here is not necessarily getting the right answer. It's more giving some thought to what you're taking into account when you're making an attack, when you're deciding whether to carry through with an attack and which attack to carry through with. Okay. So you've explained the column headings as the various positions, the two hanging guards, the two Atahos, and your narrowing and weak under strong. Those are the 6 columns. And that would probably be better titles than the ones I've got. But, and so those are your 6 columns, and then blade pressure is your rows. And you ask them, you give them a random assortment of cards, and you have groups of 2 or 3 people, and say, put some of these cards in where you think they go, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. So you do that for a bit. You wander about and help them if they need help. Answer any questions. Let them try and figure stuff out for themselves. Argue with each other in a friendly way. And then call them back. You don't have time to go through all the stuff that they've done. I often get each group just to present one and argue through their reasons and let the whole group give a bit of input into what they thought was good or what they thought was the right answer. If anything seems ridiculous, then sure, correct it. And you can say, like, these are the answers that we've come up with, and you can defend those if you feel that you want to get that across. I don't know where this sentence is going. Okay, so they're broken into groups. Let me just check that I've actually followed the lesson plan. Okay, yep. All right, so they come back, they talk about stuff. They'll probably take you through break. After break, you select some of the things that have been discussed, or maybe just one column, so that you are in a particular spot and you have your instructor provide different amounts of pressure on the blade, which will result in different amounts of, in different technique responses. So depending on how advanced they are, they might simply be told your instructor is going to give X amount of pressure and the expected response is this, or you might let them, as a bit of an extension, just play with that and have the instructor vary the amount of pressure that they're giving so that the diastro can choose the correct response. Cool. And I think that's pretty much it. You can easily spend the second half of the lesson running through just one column and trying the different responses to that. So it's a good idea to say, do you remember which ones you did last time? Which is probably quite some time ago. We should write that down somewhere in the instructor chat or something. All right. I think I've pretty much covered the way I approach the theory of everything lesson. Hope that helps. Sometimes it's a little easier to listen to than to read the lesson plan.